Thank you very much. I'm very honored and humbled to receive. You are all very nice people to honor me with this silver plaque oration. Let me start with my tributaries to Dr. M.R. Parthasarathi and Dr. A.V. Prasad sirs. As they mentioned, they are the two pillars of pathology in the Institute of Jawaharlal Nehru Medical College, Belgavi. And to honor them, they invited me to give the silver plaque oration. And once again, I thank the organizers for giving me this honor. The objectives of this oration will be read and lead. When you say that, why to read and what to read? These are two important questions. And finally, I will just end it up with how to lead. And when you are thinking of what to read, you have to know what happened in yesterday, what happened today, and what is happening today, and what will happen tomorrow. First of all, why to read? There are three main things: improve self, help others, and be socially meaningful. Why to improve ourselves? Before improving ourselves, we should know about ourselves, you should feel about ourselves, and you should respect ourselves. These three things are very important. Then only we can happily read, and we have to make sure there is no communication gap between you and you. That means whatever you want to do, you should be doing, and whatever you are doing, you should be loving. There should not be any split in the interest and what you are doing and what you want to do. That is very, very essential. Many people think rest in peace is very important, but I think live in peace is very important than rest in peace. Why to help others? Knowledge we obtain, but to retain the knowledge, we have to share it with others. And knowledge is the only thing where the more you share, the more you get. So that's very, very important to help others with our knowledge. Coming to what to read, this is the milestone that happens or happening in pathology. There are three things that happened in pathology that we think as revolutions. One is in late 1980s, IHC, the immunohistochemistry was introduced. In 2010, NGS, next generation sequencing, become widely available. And in 2018 onwards, we talk more about artificial intelligence. So I thought of briefing something about next generation sequencing and artificial intelligence in our interaction. Before going into next generation sequencing, I just want to start with the basic thing. You all know our body is made up of cell. The cell is made up of cell membrane, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. In the nucleus, we have chromosomes, chromatids, which are made up of DNAs, and DNAs are made up of base pairs, and the DNAs are transcribed to ribosomes to make the chains of amino acids, and these amino acids produce the proteins, and these proteins are the end product that determines whatever happening in our body. So this knowledge is very, very essential. And in pathology, we read all about these. When you talk about architecture and cell morphology, it is known as histopathology. When you talk about cell morphology only without architecture, then it is known as cytology. When you talk about chromosomes, we call it as genetics. When we talk about DNA, which is within the nucleus, we call it as genomics. When we talk about RNAs, it is known as transcriptomics. And when we talk about proteins, it is known as proteomics. These proteins gets metabolized, and those metabolic products are also very essential for the function of the body and the malfunction of the body. And then it is known as metabolomics. So this terminologies you should be familiar with: genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. These are very, very important in the early detection and diagnosis of diseases, and more essentially in personalized medicine, in therapeutics, and in prognosis, which are all the cornerstone for the 21st century molecular medicine. Om, that's what we all know in our country, and the mean for Om is infinite knowledge, and I think omics is related to Om, and omics means role of biomolecules of the cells. I want to compare our chromosome and all our details in the chromosome to textbooks, and we have 46 chromosomes which are made up of 3.2 billion base pairs. These base pairs are nothing but polypeptides, like in textbooks where it's made up of alphabets, which is equivalent to nucleotides. Instead of 26 alphabets, we have 4 nucleotides, and these are all the various proteins or amino acids coded by these nucleotides, and we need 3 nucleotides to known as codon to produce a amino acid, and the words are equivalents to codons, which are only 3-lettered words, and these codons gives rise to amino acids which are similar to sentences in a book. These amino acid gives rise to proteins which are like paragraphs in a textbook. Why we have to know these details? Because next generation sequencing is reading our genomic material letter by letter, nucleotide by nucleotide. Let us see what are all the chromosomal disorders we can encounter. It can be quantitative or qualitative. Quantitatively, it is variation in number. We usually see it in cytogenetics. Whereas qualitative variation in function, we see it in molecular diagnostic workup. This nice cartoon tells you what are all the qualitative changes that can happen. The top one is the normal DNA made up of nucleotides, promoter zone, and these colored areas are the genes. Genes are nothing but portions of the chromosomes that encode for a protein, and you can see various colored genes, and this is the next chromosome. So part of the next chromosome is also seen. Let us see what are all the structural changes that can be seen. See, these base pairs change can happen due to point mutation, and that leads to altered DNA, and that leads to altered transcription and altered protein production, and that is responsible for many diseases. And then methylation of the promoter area may happen, and this may cause dysfunction of the gene. Copy number of the gene may increase. Here it is gain, and that may lead to diseases. Fusion of genes can happen as described here, and that may also cause diseases. Insertion of some portions of the genes can also happen that leads to diseases. Some genes can be deleted leading to diseases, and some genes can be translocated that leads to diseases. So these are all the structural changes that can happen in a chromosome. Whenever there is a disease, previously we used to seek it out, but now the mantra is seek it out, sequence it out, because we know where is the amino acid deficiency, what is the portion of the chromosome, so that we can treat those conditions. Let us see a case presentation. This is a 55-year-old male presented with acute abdominal pain, and a mass was seen 5.4 centimeters. Emergency laparotomy was done, and excision of the peritoneal tumor was taken, and this is the H&E. It shows atypical mucinous lining epithelium that is positive for cytokeratin 7 and cytokeratin 20. So a diagnosis of peritoneal mucinous tumor was made. The patient had a very significant past history. 33 years back, he had a seminoma and teratoma in the testis, for which he underwent surgery and chemotherapy was started. He was doing fine. 10 years back, he had another recurrent germ cell tumor in the abdomen and thorax. At that time, it had yolk sac tumor and dysplastic teratoma where atypical mucinous epithelium is seen. You are able to retrieve that slide, and you can see the teratoma with atypical epithelial component. Again, he underwent chemotherapy and then surgery. 3 years back, he had a solid peritoneal tumor that was diagnosed as mucinous adenocarcinoma, and then he underwent surgery and HIPEC for the treatment. So the question now, this is the fourth surgery. This is the mucinous epithelium with the atypia we see. And this is the second surgery, which is part of the teratoma. We saw the atypical mucinous epithelium. So the question now is it metastasis or is it second primary? Because the treatment is totally different. From the paraffin block, the authors of this case report are able to do next generation sequencing, where they found 12p amplification in the second specimen and KRAS and GNAS mutation in the fourth specimen. There is no 12p amplification in the fourth specimen. That indicates it may be a possible primary from appendix and pancreas, and it is not related to the teratoma the patient had 33 years before. This gives us a very vital information for the treatment prognosis as well as theranosis. That leads to the clinical significance of next generation sequencing. Even though it is called next generation sequencing, the another terminology you should know is massive parallel sequencing, MPS, because this tells more about the technology rather than that next generation sequencing. Because we are already crossing the generation, we cannot be calling it as next generation after some years. So the massive or massively parallel sequencing is the preferred terminology. What is massively parallel sequencing and what can it do? It can identify nearly all the chromosomal disorders. For example, single nucleotide variants, small insertion and deletions, structural variants, copy number variants. It can identify the massive parallel sequencing or next generation sequencing can identify all these defects. In addition to that, it can also identify defects in expression data, metamutational data, for example, tumor mutational burden, which is very important in prognosis. It can identify somatic and germline mutations, and it can identify even non-human sequence in human tissue that plays a very vital role in infectious diseases. For example, integrated viruses to our DNA sequence can be identified. We can also establish clonality and chimerism. The use of massively parallel sequencing is very extensive. And these are all the parts of sequencing chain, where first we have to get the pre-analytical material and the extract, and then we can make the library preparation depending upon what we are looking for. Then we can sequence it. After sequencing, we need bioinformatics help to make a sense out of a lot of data we receive from the sequencing, and then we have to interpret and reporting. This is a picture of Dr. Jason Rosenberg. He is very authentic in next generation sequencing. His duty is mainly to do next generation sequencing, and he had 2 lectures in CAP virtual lecture series. I request all of you to listen to that if you are interested in next generation sequencing. Library selection forms a very important role. What do you mean by library selection? For example, if it is a solid tumor, what are all the genes you are looking for? I know you can look for all types of genes, but you have to specifically look for some genes. This tells you an example here. This is the panel for solid tumor sequencing, where we can see 152 genes in one single run, and these bold underlined letters are the common genes that are involved in any solid tumor. In addition to that, we can look for additional genes also. That's one of the advantage of massive parallel sequencing. Many gene panels are available as a commercial package. I just put some of them here. For example, Foundation One clinical diagnosis, NCC OncoPanel. These are all the number of genes involved in these panels. So depending upon the disease, you can select the panel and you can screen for more genes in one single run. You all know Human Genome Project that helps us a lot in the next generation sequencing, because only in Human Genome Project that ran from 1990 to 2003, we came to know 3.2 billion base pairs are there in 46 chromosomes, and these 3.2 billion base pairs code for 20,500 genes in any normal human being. Let us see, for example, chromosome 1. The data from the MedGenome project tells us the length is 250 million approximately. Number of genes in chromosome 1 is 1961, and this is the structure of the gene and various chromosome 1 with various genes. And these are all the chromosomes situated, these are all the genes situated in chromosome 1, and these are all the diseases: Alzheimer's disease, Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease type 1 and 2. These are all the diseases that are present whenever there is a deficiency or structural alteration in chromosome 1. So the Human Genome Project nicely tells us the composition of all our 46 chromosomes. That knowledge is very, very important in interpretation of the next generation sequencing. Following this Human Genome Project, we had another international project known as the Cancer Genome Atlas, TCGA, that paved the way for precision medicine, and FDA started approving the gene panel test based on the Cancer Genome Atlas. What happens in the Cancer Genome Atlas? They tell data that explains the molecular basis of cancer, that subtypes the tumor molecularly, and that identifies the therapeutic targets. For example, these are all the data for adrenal cortical carcinoma, and these are all the genes involved in adrenal cortical carcinoma. So when you are looking for a NGS for adrenal cortical carcinoma, you select these genes in your library so that you can see what genetic alteration is happening in that particular tumor. And data are available for around 55 tumors: bronchus and lung, hematopoietic reticuloendothelial, breast, colon, like 55 organs have been identified, and the data is available. And the whole data is available in the Pan Cancer Atlas, and the Pan Cancer Atlas and Human Genome Project can help us in determining the composition of chromosomes in the next generation sequencing. The advantages, as I told you, it is massively parallel. More data can be identified at once. More kind of data can be identified. For example, in myeloproliferative neoplasm, you know, commonly we do JAK2, but it is also associated with BCR-ABL fusion, CARL exon 9 deletion, MPL defect, and JAK2 exon 12 deletion. So if you want to do all these 5, if you want to see all these 5 alterations, it's better to go for next generation sequencing or massive parallel sequencing. If you want 1 or 2, you can go for Sanger sequencing. And it is one of the disadvantages is slow and expensive. Why it is slow? Because we have to batch the sequencing. That's why it is getting slow. But when you get good number of cases, we can run it efficiently. It was expensive before. And another thing I want to mention here, NGS cannot be supported by single hospitals. That's why we are not able to do NGS in individual hospitals, because the case volume load may not be enough to run it in individual hospitals. Whereas many corporate companies are having NGS successfully, because they collect many cases from all around India and then they do it. Their load is good. That's why corporates are able to survive financially. Coming to the cost, there is a good news. Cost of the human genome sequencing was like 100 million in the year 2001. And as you see in this graph, it has drastically reduced and it is around $1,000. And we are thinking that it will be becoming cheaper and cheaper every day. That's a good news. It's like anything in our life. For example, even immunohistochemistry was very costly when it started in 1980s. Now it is done routinely and it is cheaper. Like that, in future, the NGS will become cheaper and we can apply for all our cases. Let us shift gear and see what's happening in the artificial intelligence. Currently, humans are working like machines, so there is less time to enjoy, to relax, to learn, to improve, and to innovate. So, how to change this? We have to make the machines work like humans, and that's what artificial intelligence will be doing. So artificial intelligence is a digital computer or computer controlled robot that performs tasks commonly associated with or done with intelligent beings. You have to remember, we create artificial intelligence to help ourselves and not to replace ourselves. There's a big fear that artificial intelligence will replace all the jobs, which is not totally true. Can artificial intelligence replace human beings? No. But one thing you have to remember, when a human being is having an artificial intelligence as a help, he will replace or he or she will replace human being without artificial intelligence. So it is very, very essential to know and to use artificial intelligence in our day-to-day practice. What is the similarities and differences between human and artificial intelligence? We speak, and that is known as speech recognition and reply in artificial intelligence. We read and write. That's done by machine, by natural language processing. We see many things in the world that can be done by computer vision in artificial intelligence. We recognize many things that happens in our day-to-day life, and that can be done by data processing by artificial intelligence. We see patterns, and especially in pathology to make diagnosis, that pattern can be seen by the computers also. And we have, most importantly, brain. The equivalent, I cannot say it is a replacement, the equivalent to brain in the artificial intelligence is the neural network. So this neural network is very important to do all the other functions. The three things, feelings and bias, inherent human errors and fatigue, these are present mainly in human beings, and these are totally absent in artificial intelligence. This is one of the major advantage why artificial intelligence has to be employed in many areas. And both human beings and artificial intelligence can learn and remember as they are doing many and many projects or procedures. Many people think artificial intelligence is a very hi-fi thing and we cannot use it. But knowingly or unknowingly, we use many artificial intelligence even currently. For example, phone with Face ID, that is by artificial intelligence. Lot of emails we use, and you may be knowing some of our mails are going into spam, some of them are going into different folders. This we call it as filters, and these filters are nothing but artificial intelligence. We use many smart devices at home. For example, Alexa. I love to talk to Alexa in my home because it listens to me and it won't talk back to me. That's one of the artificial intelligence. Google search. You do a lot of Google search, you use Google Map and many things in Google. Without Google, I don't know how we will be surviving in future. That all of the Google search is done by artificial intelligence. And then many guidances that we receive in Amazon. For example, if you buy a product in Amazon, then it will have its own recommendations. These products are all recommended. and you may be seeing a lot of Netflix movies now, and even in Netflix they give a lot of recommendations depending on what you are looking. These are all part of artificial intelligence. So we are using a lot of artificial intelligence in our life currently. And what are all the artificial intelligence that can happen in future? Enhanced homes. I will show you a video to see how the home can be made artificially intelligent by doing everything by itself. Autonomous transports, transport without drivers, it is on the way. Healthcare, for example, virtual nursing assistants. Many companies are leading in the development of virtual nursing assistants, which is very, very important in the situations like currently where social isolation and physical isolation is available, is a need of the hour. The virtual nursing assistants will go and work in the uh, isolated areas along with the COVID positive patients. Virtual reality and enjoyable education, these are all the other things in future. For example, in enjoyable education, when you are seeing this video or when you are attending this webinar, depending upon your facial expressions, the computer may decide whether you are interested or not. If you are interested, it may suggest, do you want to shift to some other program? So that type of advancements are coming. Let us first see a small video where we see the advantages of having artificial intelligence in the enhanced homes. It's a beautiful morning. Both mom and dad are cycling. They are reaching the home. Let us start the movie. This is a nice artificially enhanced. The minute they come to the house, garage opens. All the equipments in the kitchen gets on, and when father arrives at the hospital or home or office, computer turns on, the screen lights up, windows lights up, and in the evening when they play, what are all the calories they are spending is recorded. Sprinkler is put on. When the guests are arriving, it is shown automatically, and the door opens automatically, and the guests are invited. Guests had a nice dinner and they gone home, and the kids go to bed. 8 p.m. the door locks automatically. As the people move upstairs, the lights in the ground floor switches off, and when the people go to sleep, the whole house is in the energy saving mode where all the lights are switched off. Whatever you have seen here, there is no human interference, starting from opening the door to closing the door and switching off all the lights is happening through the automated artificial intelligence connected programs. Let us see one example in virtual colonoscopy. We are going to start the colonoscopy here, and you can see a polyp here. Let us see how it looks in the virtual colonoscope. So we are starting here. We are going in. The mucosa is all right. There is no polyp there. There is no ulcers. It looks fine. As you go up, you can see a small portion of the polyp there, and you can see the stalk there. And you can even see the stalk with a specialized thing to see is there any invasion or not. So this helps us to see the whole colon. So this is one of the example of virtual education. The artificial intelligence, even though we are talking about now, it started in 1956, and there are many milestones in artificial intelligence, and I want to highlight the things which we are interested. In 1990, the whole slide scanner was introduced. That turns around, or that's a big revolution in diagnostic pathology. In 2017, FDA allowed one of the machine from Philips, IntelliSight, to it has been authorized to work as a digital pathology whole slide scanning solution. In 2019, Leica Aperio has been approved by FDI, and in 2020, we have another one, Sectra. So there are 3 machines available now for whole slide scanning. This whole slide scanning is very, very important in artificial intelligence, and let us see how it helps. Let us imagine a patient coming to the hospital. He is having a mass in the colon. Seen by the surgeon. Surgeon operates and sends the specimen to pathology. The specimen is given access number, it is given grossing, processing, and staining has been done. After the staining, the whole slide is imaged. This is the first step in artificial intelligence in pathology. And these images of the whole slide has been sent to the pathologist for review. In simple cases, pathologists can diagnose and give a final diagnosis without any problem. In complex cases, we have to ask for additional IHCs, and these IHCs can be read by artificial intelligence. The whole slide imaging and automated IHC scoring can be given, or we may go for molecular testing like NGS, which we saw before. And this molecular testing creates a lot of bioinformatics. Again, artificial intelligence helps us to get some additional information. The additional information obtained from IHC or molecular testing is incorporated into a report by, again, help of artificial intelligence, and a final diagnosis has been composed. After the final diagnosis has been composed, it is released into lab information system, then into hospital information system, then into the internet, and alerts have been sent to surgeons and patients that the report is available. So this way, the artificial intelligence can help in all the 3 phases of pathology specimen, namely pre-analytical, analytical, and post-analytical. Once you have a beautiful system, the turnaround time can be reduced, and it starts from the patient and ends with the patient, so that the whole cycle is closed. And artificial intelligence helps us in a lot of ways by doing many things. Let us see a case study. This is a 43-year-old female with a 1.7 centimeter mass in the pancreatic tail. You can see the pancreatic parenchyma, and this is the pancreatic duct. And you can see a very nice pancreatic tumor, very well circumscribed tumor. On H&E, it shows some tubercular or festoon pattern, and the cells are more monomorphic and moderate amount of eosinophilic cytoplasm, and they have a salt and pepper chromatin pattern with micronucleoli, and areas of fibrosis are also seen, and there is no mitosis. I am pretty sure you all will be able to diagnose this as a neuroendocrine tumor, previously called as islet cell tumor. And all islet cell tumors, as you know, we have to do the Ki-67. The Ki-67 index here is like 1 to 2%. So when you are talking about neuroendocrine tumor, this cartoon you have to remember. Neuroendocrine tumor in all the organ, especially in pancreas, divided into neuroendocrine tumor and neuroendocrine carcinoma. The neuroendocrine tumor is differentiated into grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3, depending upon the mitosis and the Ki-67 index. When you see 2 to 20 mitosis, it is grade 2 NET, neuroendocrine tumor. Or when the Ki-67 index is less than 3 up to 20, it is neuroendocrine tumor grade 2. Anything below is grade 1, and anything above is grade 3. And how will you differentiate grade 3 from neuroendocrine carcinoma? We have to look for TP53, SMAD4, KRAS, and the RB genes, which are abnormal in neuroendocrine carcinoma, whereas their functionality is preserved in neuroendocrine tumor. So this cartoon is very important in the diagnosis of neuroendocrine tumor. And according to this cartoon, no mitosis, Ki-67 index is 2%. So this is diagnosed as neuroendocrine tumor G1. How artificial intelligence can help? The Ki-67 index can be counted by 4 things: eyeballing, eye counting of the cells, manual count of a camera captured printed image, and automated counting. Advantages and disadvantages have been given here. This is a method where the manual count is done with a camera captured printed image. Get a color print of the camera in the hotspot where the Ki67 is very high, and you mark the Ki67 positive cells with red and cross out the nuclei that are Ki67 negative. So that tells you how much is the Ki67 index, and you have to do for 500 cells. It is somewhat tiring procedure. Whereas artificial intelligence, after whole slide image, it can give a count within minutes. But the only problem here, you see some of the lymphocytes are taking up the Ki67. This also will be interpreted as positive by the artificial intelligence, but people are working on that to reduce the errors in the artificial intelligence. This picture, this is a paper done in Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital. They circulated this computer captured image and asked people to give a Ki67 index, and they gave 4 choices: less than or equal to 3, 4 to 6, 7 to 10, or more than 10. And you can see how manual interpretation varied from less than 3 to 10. In fact, it is more than 10 here. All these positive, even faintly positive, should be counted as positive. And artificial intelligence can help in these doubtful cases where if you want a very consistent result, artificial intelligence can deliver. So artificial intelligence can help in the diagnosis by doing a pattern analysis, giving a definitive or differential diagnosis, and through their neural network, they can help us what are all the further investigations requested in cases of differential diagnosis. For example, if any additional IHC markers or any molecular workup, it can suggest to us. Prognosis can be determined by estimating the tumor burden, extent of invasion, tumor grading, measurement of Ki67, tumor infiltrating lymphocytes or tumor budding, micrometastasis in lymph nodes. A quick word on tumor grading. We all have 3 grades, 1, 2, 3, and most of us give grade 2. And if you analyze grade 2, it will have grade 1 and grade 3 also when you are doing it manually. But by using the artificial intelligence, it can be done exactly the same way. And another important thing of artificial intelligence is identifying the metastasis in lymph nodes, especially when they are very small in size, especially in special tumors like lobular carcinoma breast or signet cell carcinoma stomach, where the tumor cells may look very bland, may look like histiocytes. In those cases, artificial intelligence will help us to correctly diagnose the micrometastasis. In the theranosis, the artificial intelligence helps us in predicting what medicine can be useful, in personalizing the medicines, and what patients will respond to treatment by analyzing the molecular events. So these are all the things I want to discuss about next generation sequencing or massive parallel sequencing and artificial intelligence. After learning, we have to disseminate the knowledge to others to help them to improve, and we have to be socially meaningful by leading. And the main point that determines a person as a good leader is the attitude. The attitude determines your altitude, how high you can go. When you have a bad attitude, it's really bad. You cannot do anything with a bad attitude, and you have to change the bad attitude. And you have to keep your life very simple but significant. And never ever compare yourself to others. That is the maximum insult you can do to yourself by comparing with others. And you have to remember, the struggle you are doing today will help you by giving strength to face the problems tomorrow. And as a leader, you have to work with many people. And if you have any problem with any people, talk to each of them. As it mentioned here, a lot of problems in the world would disappear if we talk to each other instead of talking about each other. This is very, very essential to remember to become a good leader. And you need to hang out with people who fit your future, not your history. And sometimes our life will get out of focus, and we are very good in getting the good focus. So whenever your life gets blurry, adjust your focus and proceed. And very essential thing in, especially in pathology, we learn little from victory and much from defeat. The best teacher that you can have in the entire world is your mistake. Please learn from your mistakes, okay? And many people are spending time in denying the mistake. That is the greatest mistake, fatal mistake we do, by denying the mistake. Whenever we missed a diagnosis or whenever we have done something wrong, first accept it and try to learn from it. Then that will help you to avoid in doing it again. Be happy with whatever you have. Keep working on what you love. And remember, a happy life begins by saying, thank you for what I have. That type of attitude is very, very essential to have a happy life. Be positive, be hopeful, be helpful, be happy, be active, be kind, be free, and be you, because success depends upon the second letter, which is nothing but you. So to conclude, be a learner, and the learning should be lifelong. My professor used to say, if the learning is not lifelong, or learning is lifelong, otherwise life will not be long. So be a learner for lifelong. Be ready to change. Whatever change comes, just accept it and move with it. And try to bring the change, because the person who brings the change leads the change. That is very, very essential. And be a leader. And please remember, leaders create leaders, and leaders won't create followers. As a leader, you have to create leaders. Seeing the sick patient and serving the sick patient is a privilege, and it is not a job. With these kind words, I will finish my discussion. And these are all the references. Jason Rosenbaum in CAP virtual lectures. There are two very good websites that deals about human genome research and the cancer genome atlas. And artificial intelligence, I have nice articles. And one of the histopathology also talks about artificial intelligence as a third revolution in pathology. Again, I want to pay tribute to Drs. M.R. Parthasarathy sir and A.V. Prasad sir. They are true leaders, because they created leaders who are having the torch and running for next destination. And I thank all the organizers and the team for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.